Hey, what's up? Zach here, and today I've got the top 10 coolest and most interesting shoes for the 2024 Paris Summer Games. And it has been, let's say, a very interesting travel experience trying to get here with all the issues that the US airlines were facing. I'm sure you've seen it in the news. So this video trying to get here is going to take some pretty interesting turns. Let's get into it. Now, coming in at number 10 is a shoe I actually have on right now, and that is the Nike Kobe 4 Protro. Members of Team USA Basketball are going to be wearing the Kobe 4 Protro, not necessarily the gold medal colorway that's coming out, but the Team USA colorway. However, there's so many interesting and unique colorways of these shoes, and it's pretty cool that a shoe that's as old as this is still being used in competition, much like Kobe Bryant was using these back in the day. And the beauty of the Kobe 4 Protro comes down to their simplicity. There's not much to go wrong with this shoe. Yeah, they're not the flashiest of Kobe's or the flashiest of newer Nikes, but to really get the job done and to have confidence in a shoe, it is also not the most maximalist out there. These things can play like a super rugged, more maximalist shoe with honestly very minimal components to them. It's just the design of the shoe and how they utilize all the different materials in them is why they made this list. All right, now the next shoe on this list is the On Cloud Monster 2. Now you will see a special colorway of these for the Swiss Olympic team. You actually might have already seen them at the opening ceremonies wearing these. Now, the Cloud Monster 2 is an interesting shoe in and of itself, in terms of super shoes, but it's not necessarily the shoe itself that interests me so much. It's On as a company in general. Now, On's technology is nothing new, right? We've seen these pods, cutouts in the foam before, and the more robust top-loaded plastic shanks. This stuff has been tried before by other companies, and largely it's actually failed. You haven't seen this in the market, and somehow On has taken this technology, which has, kind of been unproven in the market, and taken it to the point where every other person you see, if you're at any sort of sporting event, if you're walking around Disney, if you're at the Olympics, somebody is wearing On, right? Where it used to be all, Nike, Adidas. Now it's, mainly you're seeing these CloudTech pods with On. And it's not that On shoes are all that ultra comfortable versus others, or, they do anything that more spectacular than other companies, although they are very good for running up and down hills. But it's just the fact that On's positioning in the market in terms of their marketing, who they have gotten to endorse their brand, and kind of, what their brand represents, that has really brought them to kind of the forefoot of sneaker culture. They've taken, kind of the scenic route to it, but there's no denying that On has become a just ridiculous force in the sneaker game. Now, next up, I know Nike SB has gotten a lot of press from some of their newer skate shoes or newer tech they're putting into skate shoes. But to me, the Nike Air Zoom Ninja 3, to me, is just one of the best refinements of a signature shoe out there, especially because Nyjah Huston has been around for so long, and this is the third iteration of his signature shoe. And on the Ninja 3, you get something that I really have not seen on any shoe in any sport, and that is a triple ankle collar. This ankle collar is, number one, a booty liner, which is a single piece ankle collar, which means that you can get so many degrees of freedom. The shoe will just kind of move and bend with you all over the place. But then you've got two reinforcements on top of that. So even though the ankle collar is so low, it's such a low top, which allows him to just evert and invert, pronate and supinate to such an extreme degree to, do the type of flip tricks that he can do, but it also holds you into the shoe. There's zero heel slippage on these, and you really need that to be confident, especially when you're trying to really put a lot of force down into the board to get the board to do what you want. The other thing that just amazes me about these shoes is their grip. Number one, it is a cutout honeycomb pattern. You can actually see the filing underneath of it, but the tread on this is so gripping. This thing has beaten out every shoe I've ever put on my grip test ramp by a country mile. And you really need that because, especially in an Olympic street skating competition, a lot of times it's the number of tricks that you can try to pull off at a given time. And so if you're coming down from one trick and you're really off balance and you only have a split second to get your feet set for the next trick, being able to grab traction on that grip tape from really anywhere on this shoe with just such crazy precision is why this shoe is what Nyjah Huston is still using. And someone like him who really knows what they're doing, has been around street skating for so long, being on his third signature shoe, you really can get some of the refinements and really just the precision that the Ninja 3 offers you. So volleyball shoes have always fascinated me in that there's such small differences between volleyball shoes and basketball and tennis shoes, yet you can play volleyball in basketball and tennis shoes, but basketball and tennis, volleyball shoes might not be ideal for. Now, this next shoe, the Mizuno Wave Momentum 3, though, really takes a lot of the best aspects of one of Mizuno's best tennis shoes, the Wave Enforce Tour, and then brings it to a hardwood court. So, the Wave Momentum 3, it looks like a super bulky shoe, yet it plays like a much more nimble shoe. It kind of gives your foot more of the insulation and lockdown of a more mid-top or high-top shoe, but it has more of the movement characteristics of a more low-top tennis shoe like the Wave Enforce Tour. So if you happen to catch any of the volleyball tournaments at this year's games, make sure you check out what's on feet. You're going to see a lot of different shoes, but one of the main constants will be the Wave Momentum 3 because it is such a popular shoe for a really good reason. All right, now the next shoe on this list is the Nike Zoom X Victory 2. Ironic that we're doing it right under the Arc de Triomphe. But I've said this so many times that my favorite use case for Zoom Air is when it's combined with something with rigid plastic underneath of it. That way that tensile pouch of air actually has something rigid to bounce off of. No, it's not going to be as comfortable as plush when it's combined with foam, but in this case you actually do have a pretty large bed of Zoom X foam from the midfoot all the way to the rear foot. Now remember, the faster you're going in a running shoe, the less time your foot actually spends on the ground. And in a case of a track shoe, when you're really only using the forefoot and the rear foot is basically just there as window dressing because your heel is really never coming down on the ground, you can give a shoe this much light Zoom X foam and basically just a little bit of a plastic piece here, make the shoe ridiculously light and really tailor the shoe to a forefoot strike, giving you this huge piece of Zoom Air, and then the rest of the shoe just being all about making the shoe light yet maintaining structure. Nike also does this really well with their soccer cleats, once again getting that Zoom Air pouch and combining it with the more plastic spikes in the shoe, making Nike soccer cleats actually some of the most comfortable out there. Same with their track spikes, because a lot of times in a track spike, remember, they're not meant to be forgiving. They're meant to be, for performance, whereas when you put a Zoom Air pouch on them, you can, number one, feel the difference under the ball of your foot, but number two, it's actually your metatarsal heads bouncing off of tensile air, which is bouncing off of hard plastic, which is bending and cantilevering against the ground. It just gives you that much more of a pop when you're putting that crazy force down on them. Now, if you're looking for the craziest shoe at this year's 2024 games, look no further than the Adidas Pro Evo 1. But honestly, to look at it, it doesn't look like much, and to even feel it in your hands, it feels like even less, coming in at 5.4 ounces for a men's size 11. These things are just a marvel of rubber and foam engineering that Adidas has gotten this shoe this light and given it this much pop. The shoe is meant for one race and one race only, your discovery run and then a marathon. So if you see this shoe at the 2024 games, know that Adidas put in just a superhuman amount of hours for that one race that you're going to be watching. Because after that, this super shoe is pretty much done. Even Adidas says so. It's really only meant for one use. Now, these things come in at $500 US retail and even more on the resale market. And I think, honestly, that's what makes it even crazier, is that Adidas did not make this shoe for the everyday runner or even the below everyday runner like myself. They made it for the people you're going to be seeing, at the marathon at these games. Now, if you don't feel like shelling out the $500 Adidas Pro Evo 1, the next most coveted shoe in the marathon space, or just running space in general, is probably the Nike Alphafly Next Percent 3. Now, the Alphafly Next Percent 3 is actually arguably the fastest shoe in the world, even versus the Pro Evo 1, just because of the long lineage of the Alphafly line, breaking records left and right, especially if you've watched any of Kipchoge's races. Now, the lineage of the Alphafly obviously goes back to when Nike first started putting full-length carbon fiber plates and Zoom AirPods in the shoe combined together, and these were considered illegal by a lot of runners, a lot of pundits, just because of the crazy mechanical advantage they give your foot with the full-length carbon fiber plate bouncing off of these Zoom Air units. However, unless you're a really elite runner, you're probably not going to be able to extract the performance of someone like Euclid Kipchoge can in these, who've just set record after record after record. So if you watch the marathon here in Paris 2024, you'll probably see just as many Alphaflys as you do any other shoe, because this shoe has been proven year after year after year to be, like I said, arguably the fastest shoe in the world. Now, the next coolest piece of footwear you're gonna see actually isn't a shoe at all. It's actually the insane custom orthotics that you'll see just about every athlete wearing here at the games. Because aside from a few very unforgiving shoes or shoes that just really can't accept an orthotic, 99% of the athletes you'll see here are wearing custom orthotics, because custom orthotics, or just orthotics in general, allow your foot to perform at its most efficient. It kind of is like airbrushing for your foot and leg. What it does is they bring the ground up to your foot so that all the little lumps and bumps and little idiosyncrasies of your foot get smoothened out. And because these athletes are practicing over just hours and hours and hours a day, things that you and I wouldn't really notice in our feet, you know, little deformities that wouldn't really cause any issues, when you're using your foot with these really specific movements, like let's say practicing a jump shot over and over and over again in basketball, which is just not a natural motion for your foot and leg, the orthotics will help you do that in the most efficient way possible, and therefore save yourself from injuries. No, they're not a miracle cure, but they will slow down the progression of injury quite a bit versus just wearing shoes alone. I said, yeah, custom orthotics can be great. There are a few problems with them though. Number one, they're only as good as the person that's molding them. So if the person actually fabricating, molding the orthotics, casting the orthotics isn't really intimately aware of the needs and demands that you're going to be putting on those orthotics, you can really end up with a subpar product. The other problem is, in a lot of areas, custom orthotics are becoming almost cost prohibitive. I've seen custom orthotics go $500, $700, even up into the thousands. And that's why, you know, usually when people come into my office, the first line of defense I put under people's feet has been Power Step long before they ever sponsored a video like this one, because the arch support in a Power Step, as you can see here, pretty comparable to any custom orthotic you're gonna get on the market. And this is one of the ones that I have molded, and just as good as the one I've molded. Plus, Power Steps are infinitely cheaper than custom orthotics. And as we've seen a lot of the times, the Power Steps, especially the Pinnacle line, will last just as long as a lot of custom orthotics, and even longer than some others. So if you do want the best arch support on the market, at least in my opinion, and like I said, arch support and durability comparable to the custom orthotics you've seen in this video, then Power Step is your answer. I'll leave a link in the description below, as well as a discount code you can use 15% off. All right, back to the list. So if you didn't know, tennis players are very averse to change, and that's why if you're watching the tennis event at this year's games, if you look at Carlos Alcaraz's feet, this year's Wimbledon champion and Spain's next great player, you'll see the Nike Vapor Pro 1 dressed up as the Nike Vapor Pro 2 or Vapor Pro 11. And you know, when this shoe came out, it actually came out in 2021, and this shoe's pushing 3-4 years old. And when it came out, it actually got a pretty lukewarm reception after the Vapor 10 was just such a hit shoe. However, like me, Carlos Alcaraz really found something he liked in the ridiculously light uppers, really flexible midsole, and real just ease of maneuverability of this shoe. No, it's not the most durable shoe in the world. It's got this really long plastic bottom-loaded shank that's actually serrated that can actually crack on people if you use it too much, but when you're a top 5 player in the world, that's really not a concern. You can just keep getting new ones. So if you see Carlos Alcaraz at this year's games, pay special attention to his feet, because he will be wearing the Vapor Pro, the original, just dressed up to look like the Vapor 11 or the Vapor Pro 2. Now, one of the biggest controversies at this year's Olympic Games came in the selection of the women's basketball team, with Caitlin Clark being left off the squad. But that controversy aside, there's no denying the meteoric rise of women's basketball in the last few years, and no shoe I think encapsulate that better than the Stewie 3 from Puma. And this is now Breanna Stewart's third signature shoe, and with the Stewie 3, it seems like Puma has really cracked the code of making a drop-in midsole shoe both nimble, but also ridiculously sure-footed. If you ever watch Breanna Stewart play, a lot of times she gets up into the air with kind of reckless abandon, not knowing if she'll have clean floor to come back down on. And the Stewie 3 not only allows super nimble play, but also a really solid base to come down on. So if you're watching the women's tournament this year, make sure you check out Breanna Stewart and her special colorway of the Stewie 3. To me, one of the greatest stories in signature basketball shoes out there, bar none. All right, that's it. At the beginning of this video, after my 30th hour at the airport, I wasn't really sure I was even gonna be able to make this video because I was just so tired. But after being here at the games, it really has kind of re-energized me, and just, if you have a chance to come to an Olympics, it is just an amazing event. So if you do want to take a deeper dive into some other really interesting shoes that I've reviewed in the last year, make sure you click into this video up above, subscribe down below. Respect driver info. I'll see you somewhere in the Sneakerverse.